Hi, it's Global Politics with Jim Martin. Several people have asked me recently about how the Nazi Party took power in Germany during the 1930s. Let's talk about the context that we must consider from a European perspective about the rise of the Nazi Party. Germany, in the wake of World War I, was crushed under the weight of the penalties imposed upon it by the Treaty of Versailles. That's the treaty that brought World War I to an end. This treaty redrew Germany's borders, creating new countries from parts of them. It took its colonies away. It put strict limits on its military and finally imposed massive reparations on the country, creating a dire economic situation for average Germans. The Weimar Republic, a quasi-democratic government that labored during the 20s to find some sort of legitimacy, was hated by most German elites because it was aligned in part with the Social Democratic Party. On the street, right-wing militias, secretly employed by the underground German general staff, began to fight pitched street battles with communists and socialists. The German military also secretly worked with the Soviet Union to create training cadres that eventually formed the battalions, divisions, air forces, and navies of the future German military. Inflation and unemployment were rampant in the early 20s in Germany. Rumors of coups by left-wing or right-wing forces were constant and often more than just rumor. Adolf Hitler, for instance, attempted to lead a coup in Munich in 1923. A coup that was crushed and was a humiliating defeat for Hitler, so much so that most people never thought they'd hear from him again. They were wrong. Over the next few years, the Weimar Republic began to find its feet a little bit and worked out some deals and started to turn the economy around. Things were definitely getting better. The government enjoyed growing political support among average Germans, and things looked like they really might turn around. Then the Great Depression struck. Without going into great detail, these economic forces led to the resurgence of the Nazi Party, ultimately leading to its election into coalition government in 1933. How did they do this? A combination of thugs on the street and a masterful propaganda campaign, which really hadn't been seen before, using radio, co-opted newspapers, mass rallies, and other forms of very impressive, especially for the time, social connections between peoples. Also, regular folks were just simply scared and tired and broke and wanted somebody to take over and be in charge so they didn't have to worry about that stuff anymore. Most people thought Hitler was an idiot, but nonetheless, he ended up in government. Within about 6 months, he'd swept away his coalition partners, and through a series of deals with industrialists and the military elite, had cemented his hold on absolute power over the entire country. France, one of the countries that could have resisted Nazi Germany during this time, did not. French politicians were extremely wary of another war, especially one against Germany, given the almost total loss of a generation of young men in that first war. French political life was chaotic, with a revolving cast of politicians in government and the president's office. Unity was not possible under those circumstances, and fighting a war was out of the question. France created a series of border defenses and were content to rest behind them, letting the Germans do whatever they were going to do. The United Kingdom had also experienced severe casualties in the war and was loath to enter another one. They also had experienced a difficult royal succession, were dealing with guerrilla activity in Northern Ireland, and were attempting to hold on to some of the colonies in order to preserve their trade flows. Thus, economically, they were in bad shape too. In sum, the British public and its politicians had no stomach for another huge war. The United States, a distant possibility as a country that could have done something, had withdrawn from everything except its trade relationships with Europe and nearly destroyed those after the imposition of the Jones Act and the Smoot-Hawley tariffs as a response to the Great Depression. Politically, the United States was in a decidedly isolationist mindset and was struggling with its own internal economic and political concerns. Externally, it was more focused on the potential of war with Japan than it was with a European war. In sum, a variety of unique circumstances came together to allow Hitler and the Nazi Party to take power. It's unknown whether those circumstances could ever be perfectly replicated. That said, the tactics used by the senior leadership of the Nazi Party are emulated today by many peoples and politicians across the world. I hope you found that interesting. I look forward to any comments you might have, and I'll see you again on the next one. Thank you.